Well, hello everybody out there in Maryland. This is Chris from HHN.com with another exciting episode of what I'm calling the Fear the Beard HHN Chatcast, where we're just going to sit here for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so and talk about Halloween Horror Nights. Yes, Halloween Horror Nights 26 and all its glories, and even past Horror Nights and whatever else I can think of. Of course, I still do the My Talking Head episodes on YouTube. I tried to do these Fear the Beard podcasts on YouTube, but I am not as tech savvy as some people might think I am. Technology kind of hates me, as well as computers. So that stuff didn't work out too well, but to be honest with you, I kind of like doing the Facebook Live stuff. It gives me an opportunity to chat with people in real time on Facebook, where I can I have a clearer view of what everyone is saying down there. And I can interact as quickly as possible. But with that being said, if you have any Horror Nights related questions or questions for me or whatever, right now we only have one viewer, but as the viewers, if more viewers come, save your questions until the end of the video. I will address questions a little bit later. I'm going to address something that popped up, some questions that people had about something that I posted last week, but we're going to get to that a little bit later. There's also these things, like I said in the first Chatcast video, these things would probably be no more than 45 minutes to an hour. I don't know how some people can sit and talk about Horror Nights stuff in a live cast for more than 3 hours, but I want to try to keep these as short as possible. So that is where we are in terms of the house cleaning issues. Okay, so the first topic up for bids today is, of course, Halloween. Halloween was announced a couple weeks ago, about, I think it was 2 weeks ago now. This year is going by so fast, I forgot to type down the exact date of the announcement. Now, I addressed Halloween in my Talking Head video when it first came out, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail about my thoughts and feelings and what I think about Halloween coming back to the event. But yes, Halloween is coming back to the event. Of course, this would be the second Halloween house that HHN Orlando has had over the last couple of years. I am excited about Halloween. This is going to go into a much larger issue that we're going to discuss later. But I am excited. I like the fact that we're getting a sequel to Halloween. I love the first house. I thought the first house was one of the best houses that Horror Nights has ever done, and it was about time. Halloween was a property that a lot of people in Orlando wanted to come to the event for a long time, and when it finally did, it did. Now, obviously, the character of Michael Myers had been seen before at Halloween or at Horror Nights, but not a full house. No pun intended. But yeah, it was a property that people wanted to see come to the event for a long time, and when it finally did, I think they did a really good job. And I am excited about Halloween coming back. I touched on it in my Talking Head video about my my history with the Halloween franchise. Full disclosure, I am not a huge fan of the Halloween franchise. I like the first Halloween, and I like H2O, and I kind of have a soft spot for Zombie's first Halloween, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about that later. But I am not a huge fan of the Halloween series as a whole, and I really don't like the film version of Halloween 2. When I first got word that Halloween was coming back to the event this year, back in March, the only way that it was described to me was it was Halloween 2. And my question was, okay, fine, but is it going to be Halloween 2, or is it going to be their own interpretation of Halloween? Because I really don't like Halloween 2. The movie, I touched upon this in the My Talking Head video. My favorite horror franchise of all time is Friday the 13th. I love that series, even though those films are they're garbage. Those films are horrifically bad. But at the same time, those movies don't take themselves that seriously. As the series goes on, it's just goofy fun, with Jason running around killing camp counselors and things like that. The Halloween series tends to take itself a little bit too seriously for my taste as the movies go on. And the movie Halloween 2, the actual movie version of Halloween 2, it almost feels like an afterthought. Like, hey, we had, Halloween was hugely popular and made a lot of money, and it was at the time, I think, the most successful independent film of all time. I don't quote me on that, but I believe that is the case. And they had a hit on their hands, so they wanted to do a sequel, and the entire movie almost feels like an afterthought. It almost feels like, hey, we have this property, it was hugely successful, let's go ahead and rush a sequel out there. The only benefit that I think Halloween 2, the movie, has with the first film, with the overall franchise, is that it does take place right after the events of the first film. Like, it ties it together very well. But as a whole, as a film, I'm not a fan. And I was a little concerned when I'd heard that Halloween 2 was coming, that it would be a direct adaptation of Halloween 2. And while the house is a direct representation of the film, it is also going to have a little bit of their own spin on it. So we're going to see, kind of a mixture of both, even though Halloween 2, the movie, really does kind of take place in this hospital where Laurie Strode is, and where Myers stalks her to. So it will have that, but it will be sort of their own interpretation of it with elements from those films, which is fine. But I'm still excited about this house. I like the character of Michael Myers. I liked the first house a lot. It is one of my favorite houses the Horror Nights has ever done. So I am excited about it. Is it too soon? We'll get to that a little bit later. But yes, I like the fact that it is coming back. I did like the house a great deal. I do have some concerns, though. I do have some concerns, not only about it, because my hatred for Halloween 2, the movie, but overall concerns about how they're going to pull the house off. There was a time when the sprung tents were first being used for Halloween, for not for Halloween, but for Halloween Horror Nights. Whenever a house was being put in a sprung tent, the community, the fan community, the Horror Nights community, kind of poo-pooed the houses that were in those spaces. Over the last couple of years, that has kind of changed, where they put a lot more effort into creating the houses in the sprung tents, and you could easily compare a house in the sprung tents to something that's being done in a soundstage. They've really done a good job of turning that whole moniker around. Whenever there is a house over there, people don't get as dismissive about a house as they did in the past, because they have changed that moniker. And Halloween was no exception to that. That house really felt like it could have been in a soundstage. From set wise to, the whole being in the garage with the car. You could have really taken that house, and it could have easily have been in a soundstage. So they have changed that around. My concern with Halloween 2 is that it's in the parade building. While the parade building, you could argue, is almost as big as a sprung tent, or has the same type of space as a sprung tent or whatever, it's still a lot smaller, and they have a lot less control over what they put in there. And the things that were being touted about Halloween 2 by Aiello and the design team about the things with fire and things of that nature almost reminded me of what they did last year with The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead in the parade building really seemed like a house that was designed the original thought might have been to put it in a soundstage, but as they started planning the event, decided to pick it up and put it in the parade building and put other things in the sound stages. And when they touted last year about these big ideas that they were putting in The Walking Dead, and when you actually went into the house, you could tell that some of these sets and some of these design elements were meant to be bigger than what they were in the parade building, than what they were in the actual house. The water walkers, the church courtyard, things like that. Like that stuff seemed like it would have been much more beneficial to put in the space and the controlled environment that you would have had in a soundstage. And this notion that, again, they're touting some of these big ideas with the fire and you know, the hospital stuff and whatnot. Like, I question how much they can do with that in the parade building. Is it a deal breaker? No, but you know, it's tough to come out and say stuff like that. Like if they're going to tout, you know, these bigger ideas in that space, make sure that you can pull it off. Because one of the biggest flaws and downside to the Walking Dead house last year was the stupid walkers in the bathtubs, which, you know, I stopped watching The Walking Dead a long time ago. I had no idea what this whole thing was about, you know, walkers and water or whatever. But when I first went into the house and the way that it was described, the way that they were sort of selling it before the event, was not what I envisioned when I walked into that scene with the walkers in the jacuzzis. And I hope that these ideas with the fire and whatnot, they're not sort of overselling those ideas, because that was, for me, one of the downsides to The Walking Dead house last year. I didn't totally hate The Walking Dead house last year like some people did. Was it a great house? No, but it wasn't as bad as the first house, the first Walking Dead house they did in the past. But I think the major flaw to that house was these bigger ideas that they tried to do that should not have been done in that space. And I really hope that that is not the path of Halloween 2. If it is, there might be some trouble. You know, you won't do any favors to quell some of the naysayers about bringing the house back or bringing Myers back too soon or things of that nature. This is not the first time that Horror Nights has played with fire in a house. Because I know that there was some people when they talked about the fire and whatnot. This is not the first time they've done fire in a house. They did fire as recently as the orphanage, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was the orphanage over in the old Jaws queue. So it's not the first time we've seen fire. It's not the first time we've seen the controlled fire in a house. However they do it, I know that there's been some speculation about those fire effects they have over in the Walking Dead attraction out in Hollywood. Perhaps they've collaborated a little bit and they're going to do something similar in the Halloween house, which would be cool because those effects actually do look kind of neat if they can pull that off, whether it's real fire or not. That is my main concern with Halloween 2, really, as a house overall. I don't have a problem with the house having a sequel. I don't have a problem with the house coming back. My concern is some of these bigger ideas that they're kind of advertising, kind of selling for the house and not being able to pull it off in the same way that they were in the same instance that happened last year with The Walking Dead. Because that house suffered, for me, a great deal of, like I was saying before, of these really bigger ideas that really seemed much suitable for a bigger, more controlled environment, but they ended up putting it in the parade building. So that is my main issue. I love the idea of having a sequel to Halloween. Even if it is based on Halloween 2, whether or not they do their own spin on it is something totally different. But I do like the idea of having a sequel to Halloween. I think I don't think it's too soon. I don't think that I don't think that's going to bother the vast majority of people, which it really isn't. The people that it's really bothering are some of the more diehard fans, which we'll get to a little bit later. But I don't mind it. I've always had this moniker, whether it's The Walking Dead or whether it's a sequel to a house or whatever, whether it's a sequel to a property or a sequel to an original property, as long as the house is done well, then I don't care. I don't care what properties they use. I don't care, as long as the house is, as long as they put effort into the house. If there's no effort put into it, then it's just kind of slapped up there, like with no thought or whatever, going into it. I don't care. I don't care. That being said, there are 2 properties that are coming this year that have yet to be announced. That one property does annoy the crap out of me that it is coming, but as far as the Halloween 2, I don't care. Like I liked the first house, so I don't mind a sequel. And the name, the property alone, the name, the image of Michael Myers, the image of Halloween, that movie is so synonymous with the event. And Michael Myers is one of the more well-known slasher villains. It's going to bring people in. It's going to, they see Michael Myers, they see Halloween. Okay, Halloween's back, and that first house was really well received. So people, whether it's from the diehard fans or whether it's from just the casual Horror Nights goers these days, that first house was very well received, and that first house, people loved it. So bringing a sequel back, I think it works. I don't think it's too soon. I don't think I don't think it's going to detract a lot of people. I also do think that bringing the character of Michael Myers, even though it's not really in the 70s era, bringing the character of Michael Myers and the Halloween moniker to the event this year fits their sort of classic theme that with the Exorcist and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It sort of fits that I don't say moniker because it's not really a theme. It's not. It's just they have these classic properties like the Exorcist and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you bring Michael Myers in because the original film was in the 70s. So you bring that character in, and it does kind of fit that vibe. It does fit that a little bit. So I don't think it's an accident. I don't think that they were, their hands were tied behind their back by marketing or whatever. I do think that they wanted to do this. I think that it's not a passion project like the first house was, but I do think that they wanted to bring it back. And I have a feeling that they chose Halloween to bring back because of those other 2 properties, to have sort of this synergy between these older horror properties, The Exorcist and Texas Chainsaw. I do think that it fits that, and I don't think it's an accident that they chose Halloween 2 to come back. I don't think that it was a marketing ploy per se. I'm sure marketing was very happy that they were bringing back Halloween because, like I said, that house was very successful. So they can just slap Halloween on the marketing, and people will come in droves. So it almost seems like a happy synergy there between marketing and between art and design. I really don't think it was an accident. I think that they wanted to do it because of that, because it does fit that loose theme they have going with the classic properties. But yeah, I have no issue. I have no issue with Halloween coming back. Like I said, I love the first house, and if they can somehow duplicate that, even though it is Halloween 2, then I have no problem. Even though I really kind of don't like that film. I really am not a huge fan of that franchise, which is funny. I know there's a lot of people that are diehard fans of the Halloween franchise. I am not. I am not a fan of the Halloween franchise. Like I said, I like the first film. I like H2O. and I kind of have a soft spot for Zombies Halloween. Zombies Halloween is not great by any stretch of the imagination, but I kind of like this notion of getting into the psyche of Michael Myers. I really kind of dig that. Even though it pisses off a lot of the diehard fans of Halloween because they view Michael Myers as just this almost like the shark in Jaws, this just killing machine entity that just goes out and does whatever. But he was a real person. So when he killed his sister, I do like that. That aspect of Zombies Halloween, getting into the psyche of Michael Myers a little bit. Because all these, whether Jason, Freddy's really the only one with a personality, but Jason and Leatherface and Michael Myers, they don't really have a personality per se. They don't really have I don't want to say motive, but they don't have like a real consciousness that comes through when they're doing their things. And I know that the Halloween series, as the series got progressed or whatever, they started adding all these weird elements with Gaelic things and whatnot, and the series just gets a little too self-serious for me, and I don't really kind of dig it, especially when you start getting into the later sequels, when you're up to your 6th sequel or 7th sequel or 8th or 9th or however many Halloween movies there are these days. I think there's 9 with another one, or 8 or 9 with another one on the way. It's like you're in your 9th movie, guys. No. And that's one of the things that I like about the Friday the 13th series, because it's like, as it gets to its 10th sequel, it just de-evolves into, just fun lunacy that doesn't make any sense, and it's just, and it goes back to the characters, because I like Jason as a character, and I like Michael Myers as a character, but I might not necessarily like the movies. I'm not as big of a fan as a Freddy as some people are. Almost in the same vein as Michael Myers. I like the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and I like the third one. I think it's the third one, the first Dream Warriors movie. I like that one, and I like Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I think that is sort of the prototype for Scream. Those ideas and those themes that he was sort of exploring in New Nightmare really kind of carried over into the sort of meta, self-aware movies that are the Scream franchise. And New Nightmare is kind of where that starts in a way. You can almost watch New Nightmare and then move into the Scream series and see where those tropes that he was exploring with in New Nightmare carry over into that series. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of those series, and like I said, I like I like the first Halloween. I just, that second movie is just awful, and that would be my only thing. When you go in there, they can, you put the Horror Nights magic on it, and it could be like the best thing in the world. But my only real concern is that it is in the parade building. That's my only concern. But as far as the character coming back and the property, I have no issue with it. It doesn't bother me. But I think that covers Halloween. I just wanted to go into a little bit more detail, because I covered a little bit of Halloween in the My Talking Head video, but I wanted to go a little bit more into detail about why it doesn't bother me that it's back, and my only concern that it's in the parade building, because at the time we didn't know where it was going to be. I knew where it was going to be, but it wasn't announced where it was going to be, and I didn't have I didn't know, so I didn't want to or I didn't want to play my cards, as it were, at the time. But yeah, that is my only concern, is that it is in the parade building. But I have no problem with it coming back or being, or whatever. That doesn't bother me. We'll get more into detail about that in a little bit. But and we should have one of the reasons why I delayed the Chatcast last week is because I kind of thought there would be another announcement this week, and that has kind of been delayed. So there might be, if I was a betting man, another announcement coming at the end of next week. I would be willing to bet on that. But yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to do another Chatcast next Sunday. We'll see, because there's stuff that I want to cover as well. So I did want to address something that got a little bit. People were a little bit confused when I posted a GIF or GIF or however the millennials say it this year. I don't know. I don't know what the next house announcement will be. I'll just leave it at that for now. But anyway, I posted a GIF or GIF or whatever on Twitter, which some people were confused by, and then more people got confused when I started posting photos from the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter photos that I posted the other day have nothing to do with anything. They're not hints. They're not clues. They're whatever. The GIF, which is of the Jabberwocky from the Alice in Wonderland movie, is significant. I'm not going to say what significance it has. I will say, to clear up some confusion, it has nothing to do with the house. So if some people are confused, there you go. It has nothing to do with the house at all. So, but it is Horror Nights related, but I won't say exactly what. When and if whatever it's related to gets told, it will make sense. But it is not. It is. I will say it is not a house. It has nothing to do with houses at all, and that is your hint. It has nothing to do with houses at all. But the Wizarding World of Harry Potter photos I posted have nothing to do with anything. Those are just photos that I like to take photos, guys. I like to go down to the park. I like to take photos. I haven't been posting. Normally in the past when I've posted photos, and it is thundering outside, I usually put them on my website, but I have not had the time to put them on the website, so I've been posting them on Twitter for people to see, and they come into onto the Facebook page. But yeah, so those photos have nothing to do with anything. So clear that up right now. But yeah, so anyway, but yeah, I have no clue what the next house announcement will be. I have some ideas. There are 2 properties remaining, 2 IP properties that are remaining that have yet to be announced. So we will see. And like I said before, one of those properties that is yet to be announced, I have issues with. So thank you. And those, I took those pictures. I have a professional camera, a real camera, as it were. But those were taken with my phone. So I was playing around with some of the settings on the phone to see how good I can get those photos looking on the phone. Because the S7 has a lot of, if you go into the Pro mode on the S7 camera, there's a lot of really cool bells and whistles that you can use on the phone to make your photos look like they were taken with a quote-unquote professional camera. So I was messing around with those settings the other day. But those photos there's no connection to Horror Nights whatsoever. But the Jabberwocky GIF does. So yeah, so we'll keep it at that. And the Jabberwocky picture has nothing to do with a house. That's your other clue. Nothing to do with the house at all. But anyway, so I wanted to talk a little bit more here before I get off about this. It's not really controversy per se, but this notion that's been floating around mostly from the hardcore die-hard Horror Nights fans. I myself am one of those, but I like to try to separate my bias whenever I'm discussing Horror Nights or talking about it, or I don't like to get put into a corner when it comes to discussing this type of stuff. And I try not to get so blinded by fandom or by nostalgia or things of that nature. And there is this with the announcement of Halloween, there were some of the diehard fan base who were, every year the diehard fan base has something to piss about. So it is what it is. But I wanted to talk about this notion that the lineup so far that we have is stuff that we've seen in the past, and they're repeats. And Horror Nights doesn't do repeats, or in the past they didn't do repeats and things of that nature. And Halloween is too soon because it was only out there. It was only there 2 years ago, and what have you. The first thing I'll say is that, like I said before, it doesn't bother me as long as I have no problem with houses, sequels or requels, or houses coming back, or whatever, as long as the house is done well. That's all I care about. As long as you make a quality house out of whatever the property is. It could be The Walking Dead, it could be Halloween, it could be Freddy vs. Jason, it could be whatever. It could be The Body Collectors, it could be Jack's Funhouse, it could be Psychoscarapy. I don't care what it is, as long as it's done well, as long as you put the effort into creating a decent house. I don't care. I don't care what it is. Like I've said in the past, I stopped watching The Walking Dead. I stopped watching The Walking Dead way back in season 3. That show was fucking terrible. I hate that show. It is not a quality show. I have issue with people who don't call it a horror show, because I think it is a horror show. It's a horror show with dramatic elements in it. But I cannot stand that show. That show lost me in season 3, and I cannot believe that show is going into its 7th season. But, it's very successful. It's still very successful going into its 7th season. It's still breaking television records going into its 7th season. But I don't care if The Walking Dead is coming back for another iteration. I don't care if Halloween is coming back, even though the first house was there 2 years ago. Horror Nights has had a long history of doing sequel houses and bringing back properties and bringing back characters and things like that. The argument is that it's quote unquote too soon, or we just saw this, or the properties that are there that have already been announced are things that we've seen in the past couple of years. And this notion that Horror Nights in the past, in the so-called golden age of Horror Nights, doesn't do that, or didn't do that, and that is just flat out false. The history of Horror Nights, the history of houses, the history of Horror Nights using IPs, for example, goes back to the second event, goes back to Halloween Horror Nights 2. And this notion of repeating houses goes back to the second event of Halloween Horror Nights, Halloween Horror Nights 2. Back I'm gonna pinpoint the first 9 years of the event to try to talk about this, because when it comes to Horror Nights, when it comes to the diehard fandom, there seems to be this notion that whether it's art and design, or whether it's the so-called golden age of Horror Nights, you can't criticize, because it's the golden age of Horror Nights. It's art and design. Art and design is being handcuffed by marketing, and they don't like The Walking Dead, and this and that, and whatever. And I've said in the past that just because art and design is good at what they do, and they certainly are, if they don't like a property, you know, if they're not, if just because they don't like The Walking Dead doesn't mean that they can skimp on creating the house. Their job is to create the houses and to create the content. Doesn't matter if marketing tells them to, hey, we have The Walking Dead, create this house. If you don't like even if you don't like the property, your job is still to create the best experience possible. That is their job, and it is if a house is if a house doesn't live up to expectations, or if a house is not done well, that's nobody's fault but art and design. Art and design, that's their job. It's their job to create the houses. So when it comes to when you bring up a point like this, or you bring up you know, when the diehard fan base likes to say that you know, it's too soon for something, or Horror Nights doesn't repeat houses, or whatever, that's totally false, because they've been doing that since the beginning of time, since the beginning of the event. So I'm going to pinpoint here the so-called golden age of Horror Nights, the first 9 years of the event, before we even get to the Icon years, which the Icon years are full of repeats and full of returning characters and full of this and full of that. And this notion of what is too soon? What do you consider too soon? Is too soon a year? Is too soon 2 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 6 years? Is it whatever? Because in the case of Halloween, for example, we like to, the fan base likes to point out, well, Halloween was here 2 years ago, so it's too soon. Well, Fright Nights, the very first Horror Nights. First house ever at Halloween Horror Nights was Dungeon of Terror, right? Dungeon of Terror was in the then unused Jaws queue, because Jaws back then was a piece of shit, and they had to, you know, totally revamp the ride, and the ride wasn't working, so they used the Jaws queue. Was Dungeon of Terror. Okay, so Dungeon of Terror was the first house. Halloween Horror Nights 2. Dungeon of Terror comes back for Halloween Horror Nights 2. And they've added their first IP, which is People Under the Stairs. People Under the Stairs came in Halloween Horror Nights 2. So already they're repeating stuff. And already you have your first, you know, your first foray into the world of intellectual property. Although I did not attend Halloween Horror Nights 2, but I have heard from people who did attend that event that the People Under the Stairs wasn't exactly a direct adaptation of People Under the Stairs, but it was marketed as being the People Under the Stairs, which kind of sounds familiar. But yeah, so already in the second year of the event, they're repeating a house, and you've got your first IP. For Halloween Horror Nights 3, they have brought back People Under the Stairs. They gave Dungeon of Terror a rest, so that did not come back for Halloween Horror Nights 3. But People Under the Stairs has come back. So we've got that for Halloween Horror Nights 3, and they've added their second IP, which is Psycho. The Psychopath maze made its debut in for Halloween Horror Nights 3, which is basically just the backlot of the Psycho set they used to have. So for Halloween Horror Nights 4, they bring back Dungeon of Terror. Dungeon of Terror comes back for Halloween Horror Nights 4, and they've also brought back the Psychopath. So now you've had, so for the first 4 years alone, you have Dungeon of Terror 1, 2, 3 times, People Under the Stairs twice, and the Psychopath twice. So so already they're repeating stuff in the first 4 or 5 years of the event. We get to Halloween Horror Nights 5. Dungeon of Terror comes back, but this time they've rebranded it. It's Dungeon of Terror featuring the Crypt Keeper, the Crypt Keeper's Dungeon of Terror. So it's different, right? No, it's the same freaking thing, just with the Crypt Keeper slapped on there. It's the same house, just with the Crypt Keeper's face slapped on there. So the marketing department can market it. That's what it is. And this is also, Halloween Horror Nights 5 is also the first year they've started to really play around with their classic characters, with the Universal Classic Monsters. They brought in the House of Horrors. House of Horrors was Halloween Horror Nights 5. Halloween Horror Nights 6, They bring that back for the new House of Horrors, Universal's new House of Horrors. So they're reusing characters again. They're bringing in the same characters they used before for Universal's new House of Horrors. Then they brought it, for Halloween Horror Nights 7, they have the Museum of Horrors, which is the same freaking thing, reusing the characters over and over again. For Halloween Horror Nights 8, you have the Museum of Horrors come back again, but this time it's a dual-run house, where one side is the classic monsters, and the other side is the newer horror icons, like your Freddys and your Jasons and your Leatherfaces and your Michael Myerses and stuff like that. For Halloween Horror Nights 9, the Mummy shows up. The Mummy House shows up. So it's the first time they've actually brought in a bigger intellectual property to the event. It's not People Under the Stairs, and it's not Psycho. It's not, because at the time, People Under the Stairs was actually, I remember as a kid, when that movie came out, that was actually a pretty big deal with that movie. It was not, it was a very controversial film when it came out. It was a pretty big deal to have People Under the Stairs. So it was big at the time, but it wasn't like a huge, massive property. But it was still pretty big. But now you have the Mummy. Now the Mummy, of course, is a Universal classic monster. But this was at the time when the Brendan Fraser Mummy was coming out, so it was more based on that. And they've also brought back Psycho for Halloween Horror Nights 9, by the way. So Halloween Horror Nights 10, now you have you get to the icon years, the big shift, the big paradigm shift in Horror Nights, in the Horror Nights psyche about doing things. You have the Universal Classic Monster Mania, I think is what it's called. So again, you're repeating characters. So that is just the first. That's 10 years. I went an extra year for you guys, but that's the first 10 years of the event. So you have the first 5 years. You're repeating houses 5 times. This is nothing new. Horror Nights has repeated houses and reused characters since the dawn of its existence. So the fact that people would get so bent out of shape about the fact that Universal or Horror Nights is doing a sequel to Halloween, just 2 years removed from the event, is ridiculous. I cannot get behind that. I can get behind the argument to bring new things. I can get behind that argument. I do want new things. I want to see new houses or whatever. But to try and form your argument to the fact that Halloween is too soon, or my God, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the last time we saw Leatherface was almost 10 years ago. So this notion that it's too soon, I can't get behind that, or that Horror Nights they don't repeat houses. They don't repeat houses. They don't, it's been happening since the dawn of Horror Nights' existence. Or going into a separate argument, this argument about IPs, the second event of Horror Nights had an IP. So, I mean, this is nothing new. This is nothing, they've done this since the beginning of time. And I haven't even gotten to the icon years. The icon years are full of characters that have been repeated or, used 2 years prior or 1 year prior. I mean, Jack, obviously, in 2001 was brought back, but that was because of the events of 9/11. In 2002 saw the start of the Scary Tales franchise and the Psychoscarapy franchise and the Screamhouse franchise. All franchises which have had 3, 4, 5, 6 sequels since their original existence, since 2002. So, as a matter of fact, the sequel to Scary Tales, I think, was when was Scary Tales? The first sequel to Scary Tales was really close by to the first one in 2002. I don't have the exact year, but this notion that it's too soon, or you're bringing back houses too soon, or we've seen these characters over the past couple years. It's been happening since the beginning of Horror Nights' existence. So I cannot get behind that argument at all, because the event's foundation is built on that. It's built on bringing back popular franchises and popular properties and popular characters. That is what Horror Nights. That's what they do. They bring back these characters and these franchises. Especially when you talk about original property franchises, Scary Tales. The Body Collectors, Psychoscarapy. I mean, these are huge original properties that fans eat up. They love because first of all, it's an original property. It's not based on the dreaded IP, but because it's an original property, they eat it up. And I don't see that excuse that just because it's an IP property, it cannot have a sequel house or the characters can't come back. That to me is total bunk. It's BS. Because this notion has been happening forever. It's been happening since the beginning of time. Especially when you get to the Icon years. The Icon years, they're just, it's chock full of, icons being reused. Or original properties being reused. Scary Tales, thank you so much. Scary Tales, the first Scary Tales was 2001, the second was 2002. Exactly. But, I mean, the Icon years, I had it written down. I just, I can't read my own handwriting. But the Icon years are just chock full of characters and original properties and things like that have been reused over and over and over again. So I cannot get behind the argument, this notion that because Halloween was done 2 years ago, it's too soon. Yes, the properties that we have so far this year are properties that we've had in the past, minus The Exorcist. That's the other thing. There's never been an Exorcist house at Halloween Horror Nights. They have dabbled with the character in the past, be it Fright Nights way back in the first Horror Nights, or last year. They've dabbled with the character. I'll get to that in a minute, but this is not, it's to try and say that it's too soon for these properties, especially when you talk about The Exorcist or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The last time we saw Leatherface was in 2007. You're going on almost 10 years since the last time we saw that character. The Halloween situation is a little bit different because this is not we're going to pick up the first Halloween house and just put it in the parade building. That's not what this is. Now, this is a direct sequel to that house, so which is something that they've been doing since the beginning of time, and that's why I cannot get behind that fanboy impassioned argument. Like I said, I agree that moving forward, especially when it comes to icons and things of that nature, if they're going to continue to do icons and stuff like that, do new things. Like, I do get behind that argument, but to try and pin off your frustration as a fan, a diehard fan, because they're doing a sequel to Halloween, which just came 2 years ago, and to try to say that Horror Nights doesn't do that is bullshit. It's total BS and it's total bunk. And that's one of the things that really, like I said before, when I started this whole thing, I tried to. Sorry about that. My connection, of course, is going out. But so I'll start to wrap up here. But I don't like that the veterans of the event, some of the diehard fans, try to pass that off to some of the newer fans because it's false. Because they have been doing this since the beginning of time. They have been reusing houses 1 year removed, or 2 year removed, or 3 years removed. It's just the nature of the beast. But anyway, so I wanted to touch on that a little bit because it's something that's been kind of on my mind the past couple days. But that's it. That about does it for this episode. The two people that are in the chat right now, does anybody have any questions or comments or whatever, something that you want to ask that I can try to answer for you? By the way, I loved Insidious was great. I like that house a lot. American Werewolf is currently my favorite house. The original American Werewolf, not the one that was last year, is currently my favorite house of all time at Horror Nights. Scary Tales, and thanks for that, because I had it written down. Scary Tales was 2001. I always get 2001 also had Superstitions, which I always get confused about because I was there in 2001. No hints on scare zones. I'm not going to do that. I will say that, well, we already have one. We already know one scare zone. It's going to be Chance's scare zone. There are, I'm not sure if, I don't want to play my card. I'm not going to say anything because there will be multiple scare zones. There's some question amongst some people what exactly those other 5 scare zones, if there are in fact 6. See, I just played my cards. Because the current I think the current consensus thinking, and even if I don't think this is insider, you mean the purge? I'm gonna plead the 5th on that one. But there are I think the general consensus, because I tend to stay out of forums because I don't like the atmosphere of forums. But I did check the forums. Well, I had it written down. I did. It's on my paper. It's right here. I prepare for these things. That's why I like to trying to keep it less than an hour because I don't like to ramble. But which I tend to do if I'm not reined in. So I did have it written down, but I was just I was on a roll. So, what was I saying? The general consensus, I think, in the forums is that there will be 6 scare zones, one of which we know is Chance's scare zone. What the other 5 will be, some of us have some knowledge, but not a whole lot of knowledge. Which is kind of, it's telling in a way, but I will not be giving hints on scare zones. I'll tell you that. Well, I could be. Because, like I said, the Jabberwocky thing is not house related, so it is something else related. But yeah, I will say this too. The scare zone thing this year is going to be interesting, and the show thing is going to be interesting as well because I was not a fan of where Jack's Carnival show was last year. When I had heard that they were going to do a show there, I knew it was going to be complete and utter chaos, and it was. Having a show there today for how big the event has gotten, it just doesn't work. The event is too big to have a stage there, especially if you're converging 2 scare zones, plus you have Mel's there, and now you have the entrance to Alice, which is right by there, or not Alice specifically, but the Shrek entrance is right there. So that convergence zone just doesn't lend itself to any kind of stage or any kind of show there at all. I will say that I think if they're going to do a second show, it may behoove them to do a roaming show, kind of like what they did with Death Drums. I think that could benefit well because they cannot, to my knowledge, they cannot use. Oh, that's definitely coming back. Bill and Ted is definitely coming back. You don't have to worry about that. As a matter of fact, I think Aiello, it's confirmed for a while, but I think Aiello mentioned specifically that Bill and Ted was coming back. But as far as the second show, because I think the general consensus again in the forums that there will be 2 shows. They cannot do a show in the Animal Actor stage anymore. Those days are long gone because Animal Planet has some kind of contract. The circus show for 20, yeah, but they cannot use the Animal Actor stage. So that's out. And now that they don't have a Beetlejuice stage, they're kind of hindered with either putting a stage in that area where the Mel's drive-in area is, or a roaming show like what they did with Death Drums. But I think that if I was a betting man, that if the second show will either be a roaming show, or you're just going to get something in the lagoon. That's my guess, because I would hope that last year the powers that be, the logistic minds behind Horror Nights know that putting a stage there was a bad idea, and the total political nonsense they did the year before with the because the whole thing with the Voodoo show, the excuse that the organizers used for getting rid of the Voodoo Queen show was that it was a nightmare for traffic flow, and most of us people know that that was not the case. But if you're going to use that excuse to get rid of one show, and then you have the nightmare that was last year's Carnival show, don't bring it back, because it doesn't work. I don't care. And honestly, I think I said this in the last Chatcast. I don't care about a Chance show. Do not give me a Chance show. If you're going to do a show with Chance, do something in the scare zone. Don't give me an entire show revolving around Chance. I don't want that. I don't think it'll work very well. Because the only way that you can do it is to bring back Jack the Clown, in my opinion. But don't do that. Keep it in the if you're going to do some kind of a show or go off of this this theater of the mind theme, do something with that, but do it in the scare zone. Don't give me an entire Carnival of Carnage Returns-esque Chance show. I don't want it. And I don't think that they're going to do that. Well, to be perfectly honest with you, this will be my last thing before I venture off. I will say that now that Chance has been revealed, Chance as the icon, this notion of bringing Chance front and center, was a I don't say last minute decision, but it was a decision that was made much later in the game, and I'm willing to bet that her having a scare zone was also much later in the game as well. I don't think that was the original intention. I think a lot of us sort of know or knew that we were going to have 6 scare zones this year, but that was not on any of our radars at all. I mean, it was not talked about. It was not even an icon was not talked about. It was not something that was passed around. It was not something that this was it wasn't a last minute decision, but it was something that was decided late in the game. The scare zone, I'm willing to bet, was a much more later decision. So, I mean, if that's the case, then it wouldn't surprise me if they decide to put to do a Chance show. I would not be surprised, especially given how people have responded to having Chance as the icon. Because I think the consensus, not from the diehards, but the consensus from the general public, is there's 2 thoughts of mind: who the fuck is Chance, and oh my god, that's cool. So I don't think you're not gonna get scare zones until the full reveal. But to answer the question before I do go about the next reveal, I do think that the next reveal will be a house. And not a scare zone. I don't think you're going to get scare zone reveals until the full site reveal, unless one of the scare zones happens to be a major property. I don't think you're going to get scare zone reveals until then. That is just my thinking. But anyway, guys. Sorry about the disconnect again. I'm pretty sure that Facebook Live does that on purpose. I'm working on getting some more professional gear so that this does not happen on my phone. But anyway, so that's it for now. If there is another reveal next week, I am not sure if I'm going to do another Chatcast or not. There's a special Chatcast that I'm working on where I'm going to start going through my experiences at the event one by one. Because I started going to the event back in 2000. This has been my 17th year. So, and I've always wanted to go back and talk about that type of stuff or whatever. But yeah, if there is another reveal next week, I'll probably wait another full week before I go back and I do another one of these things. I like to simmer on these a little bit and see where, when there is a reveal, what people are saying, what the general consensus is, what the blah blah blah, so I can have something to talk about. But yeah, so but that is it, guys. I think I am done. I'm sorry about that disconnect. Again, technology and me don't mix, man. But anyway, guys, I'll talk to you later.